The Pakistan's message is that it is us today, it could be anybody else tomorrow. And while we work to ensure we get the funds for our rescue and relief, while we have a clear vision about how we don't only want to reconstruct our reconstruction and rehabilitation place to take place, but we want to do so in a climate resistant manner, a greener manner. Yes, we too aspire to build back better. So while we have that clear vision, and we engage with international financial institutions, and there's novel ideas to discuss with, rather than the great powers, we should say the great polluters, to discuss with the great polluters about debt swap and other mechanisms that may help us here and now. What we have to do is ensure that while there was no script for us, while there was no ready-made plan for us, that the next time this happens to some other country, we are more prepared. And in our country, in our efforts to bring our people to stand on their own feet, for our country to stand on their own feet, we commit ourselves, because we would have never otherwise had such extensive investment in all of these areas that have been devastated by the floods. And now there are two options for us. Either we do it cheaply and poorly and dirtily and wait for the next floods for them to be washed away again, or we do it right. We become the test case, the leaders, for what we've heard, and so only heard, about this green infrastructure, climate resilient infrastructure. And I honestly believe that domestically and internationally now, whatever our political preoccupations are, we have to understand the gravity of the situation. Before these floods, this was tomorrow's problem for us. We were working on green energy and solar energy and wind energy, and yeah, not everything's great, but we'd get there. And we'd seen historic floods that were devastating before, but we got over them. Now there's an urgency of now. And I don't wish upon anybody else to discover this urgency in the manner that we've discovered it today. So whether it's our domestic politics in Pakistan that is incredibly highly polarized, that too needs to accept the gravity of the situation and rise to the challenge. But in the international geopolitical space as well, we have to ask ourselves what history will say of the choices that humanity made when they were faced with an existential threat. We saw how during the COVID pandemic, a once in 100-year COVID pandemic that is still not over, that we did not rise to the challenge. It would have been incredibly inspirational if we had seen the President of the United States stand with the President in China and announce how we, as the human race, would defeat this existential threat. Unfortunately, we were arguing over whether it was the Wuhan virus or the China virus and how fascist it was for us to wear masks or to do lockdowns. And we suffered as a result, and we are still suffering as a result. We have a climate catastrophe that is spiraling out of control. The 10 most climate-stressed countries, out of which Pakistan is one, have contributed negligibly to the overall carbon footprint, but they are going to be the frontline victims. And this is what history will ask us, that while our planet was burning, while we were being warned time and time again, from Gore to Greta, that the climate is in imminent danger, Do we choose to ignite new conflicts, provoke new tensions, busy ourselves with the conflicts of man? Or did we rise to this occasion? And let me be absolutely clear. We will not overcome climate change. We will not save our planet if China and the United States do not work together on climate. Everything else can wait. Every other conflict, every other dispute. We'll all fight amongst ourselves if there's a planet left to fight over. Up until then, there needs to be an awakening that this is the time for unity. This is the time for multilateralism. This is not the time for war. Imagine the carbon footprint of Ukraine. I mean, this is an absolutely, I can't condemn, but farcical series of events. You can't lecture on climate, on green energy, on how we must work together while we continue to engage in conflicts. And I honestly have insisted and will continue to insist that the path to peace is through dialogue and diplomacy. The catastrophes that we are facing, the challenges that we are facing, are truly that of a global making, and surely the solutions are also global. I have no doubt that if we do work together within my own country, we will be able to surmount the challenges we're facing today. If we do work together internationally, we will be able to confront the challenge that we're facing today. If we're going into many other decades of pointless geopolitical conflict, I'd like to be told, because I think that means the planet's going to warm so much that we won't be able to live here, and I, for one, would prefer to enjoy the time we have left rather than pointlessly go about in circles. This has to be a cause that is championed by the new generation, and I must say, as the party who's advocated for environment and climate in Pakistan, it was always very difficult to have that as part of the populist discourse. I believe a tragedy of this scale will now allow us to make this front and center in the Pakistani political discourse, and I hope that the great polluters decide that they'll pause until we can survive. They will help the victims of their industrialization get over this catastrophe, and we work together for a more just world through concepts such as climate justice, peace, dialogue, diplomacy, just until we can figure out how to survive. And then there'll be many other centuries for us to fight our wars. Thank you.